But Donald Trump does not seem to be fazed with the crash in the stock markets. He says it's going to be a booming economy. And to quote him, he says it's going to be amazing. Meanwhile, a muted response from the government of India. India seems to be following the wait and watch approach on Trump tariffs. But Canada is not backing down. Canada hits back with a 25% tariff on all US auto imports into Canada. Fears of stagflation are now moving to fears of recession. The World Trade Organization forecasts negative global growth, says global economy will contract 1%. This against the previous estimate of a 3% growth. But Gujarat's gems and jewellery industry is expecting adverse impact of Trump tariffs. Meanwhile, businessman and Mahindra chairperson Anand Mahindra says that the world is becoming multipolar. He was referring to the Asian summit being attended by Japan, China and South Korea. In other news, PIYUSH Goyal, Minister of Commerce and Industry, asks startups in India to shift their focus from pure gig economy to high-tech industries. Says one should not be happy with just boys and girls who are delivering quick commerce services. ZEPTO founder Adit Palicha does not take well to PIYUSH Goyal's comments and says that ZEPTO has created as many as 150,000 jobs in India. Meanwhile, Mohandas calls the government hostile. These are the big stories that we will be bringing for you this morning. But first up, let's begin with the tariffs, and in tariffs specifically the auto tariffs. US President Donald Trump is hitting the global auto industry with a major tariff move. A new 25% levy on vehicles and auto part imports will now cover more than $450 billion worth of goods annually, according to a Reuters analysis of federal data. According to Trump, the new tariffs will drive automakers to shift production to America, creating jobs and boosting the US economy. Will it be or won't it be able to? We will discuss on the show. But first up, take a look at this report.
Donald Trump's 25% tariff on US auto imports kicks in Thursday, and the levies look set to upend the industry. A Reuters calculation shows the duties will hit some $460 billion worth of cars and parts every year. The US president says that will create jobs and boost the economy as automakers shift production to America.
These tariffs are going to give us growth like you haven't seen before, and it'll be something very special to watch.
With the tariffs on vehicles in effect, the levies on parts will then start next month. Economists have warned it's all likely to mean higher prices and reduced choice for consumers, and there are already signs that could be true. The Wall Street Journal says Volkswagen will introduce an import fee for vehicles affected by the duties. It says the German giant has halted shipments from Mexico for now and will inform dealers by mid-April how prices will change for imported cars. Meanwhile, Stellantis, the owner of brands including Jeep, will shut one major plant in Canada for 2 weeks. That's according to a union official there, who said the move was driven by the new tariffs. Such signs of turmoil are unlikely to worry Trump, however, who has said he couldn't care less if foreign cars get more expensive. He says Americans can just buy locally made autos instead. Ford has said it will offer big discounts from Thursday in a bid to make that happen. But many big-selling vehicles from US brands are actually made overseas or are full of imported parts. Trade expert Vladimir Tyazelnikov at the University of Sydney says that means the levy will not produce the effect Trump wants.
Many of those tariffs, they are imposed on parts and components, on inputs, which are used in production of American goods. So the effect on many industries, such as car manufacturing, could be the opposite. It would make goods produced in the US more expensive and therefore less competitive on markets and less affordable in the domestic American market.
For now, prices may not rise immediately as dealers have pre-tariff cars in stock, but a surge in sales over the first quarter of the year suggests consumers are rushing to snap up those vehicles. Once they're gone, price rises may not be far behind.
All right, price rise expected in automakers and what they offer to US citizens, US consumers. But here back home in India, jitters are running high on whether India's automakers as well as auto component makers are likely to get adversely affected. Well, joining me this morning is CS Vigneshwar, President FADA, and Som Kapoor, partner and future of mobility leader at EY Pathyon. Gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for being here with us on News 9. Mr. Vigneshwar, let me begin by asking you, do you see a direct, immediate impact of Trump tariffs on the auto sector to hit India's automakers?
To be very frank, I don't think so, because our exports to the US are quite small, and our exposure to the US market is very small. Forget the exports alone, because some of our automakers actually assemble some of these cars or tractors in the US. So it's going to be very, very small from the OEM perspective, but perhaps from the spare parts manufacturer's perspective, probably there could be an impact, but even that is going to be quite minimal.
The impact expected, this is the word coming in from CS Vigneshwar. Shom, let me bring you in. Shom, do you think the Indian component makers, MSMEs and auto MSMEs is a large chunk of India's MSME, which adds to employment, GDP growth and exports out of India? How badly do you expect India's SMEs to be hit with these auto export tariffs, and especially those coming on account of components which will be levied from the 3rd of May?
Hi, morning. So, interesting day to start with, but, there are two ways to look at every glass, right? It's either a glass half full or a glass half empty. We're not the only ones who are going to have these tariffs imposed on them, right? Actually, if you actually look at it, the tariffs imposed on, say, China are much higher. It's a way of looking at it. If they need to buy, like what Mr. Vigneshwar was saying, a lot of these components are used within cars which are produced in the US, right? So it's not that they will not need them to be produced going forward. From that perspective, I think if we can look at it from a glass half full, maybe there's an opportunity here for us to actually go ahead and increase some sales of components in the US. Having said that, there's going to be a little bit of turmoil in the immediate period coming through. So maybe for the next, till everything settles down and we understand the true impact of all of this, we could probably look at a little bit of for specific companies that are doing, either electric parts, transmissions, etc., which is what is normally exported out of India. There could be a little momentary challenge over there, but I'm sure the industry is resilient enough. The industry bodies are sharp enough to say that, in the ongoing discussions on tariffs at an overall level, they'll be able to find some middle ground. So it should be okay.
Okay. Mr. Vigneshwar, let's bring you back into this discussion that we are having. And one of the ideas which is drawing currency right now seems to be the fact that perhaps it's time for Indian component makers as well as automakers to look beyond the US and look at other geographies. So we know for a fact that a lot of Indian-made cars from the Maruti Suzuki stable are also manufactured in India for the Japanese market. Similarly, should Indian component makers now be looking at other markets and not get coupled with the US and try and offset what is likely to hit the industry, no matter in how much measure?
When you look at this, Karthik, in toto, I don't think tariffs are going to help anyone. As Tom said, the tariffs will also impact the prices of cars sold in the US more so than anywhere else. So our exposure as component
that the impact on cars in the US could be as high as $6,000 to $7,000 per car. So yeah. Obviously there's no doubt that it's going to hit the US the most, but the point is that US also needs to buy these components, and for those components to be competitively priced, tariffs become a spoil sport.
Today, manufacturing a car is a very, very apt example of globalization. It's very hard to manufacture a car completely in a particular country because, and as you rightly said, because of being competitive, these certain have become actually specialists in manufacturing one particular aspect of a car. So $6,000, $7,000 upwards is a huge cost even for the US. As I told before, yes, the Indian component manufacturers will be affected, but it will be quite small, not too large.
Right.
However, it's also an opportunity technology at competitive prices.
Right. All right. Shom, talk to us from a policy perspective, and I'm sure you would be talking to a lot of automakers as part of your job, but talk to us about the policy and how that should evolve from here, or what is the likelihood of the policy evolving from here? Are we likely to see, in a bid to perhaps try and over time offset the tariffs on the auto sector, are we likely to see better, sort of more favorable conditions and policy framework for US automakers to look at India again? Because we practically have hardly any, in fact, maybe none at all when it comes to US brands still selling in India. GM is gone, Ford is gone, Tesla is yet to come. So do you think some sort of a softening of stance as far as India's policy is concerned to attract US automakers to sell in India to offset these tariffs?
Well, I think there's no hiding here. We've all heard that how the government's been trying to woo Tesla to a certain extent, and I think they've also shown interest already. So they've probably set up at least two showrooms, is what I hear, one in Delhi and one in Bombay, and they're going to find a way of getting into the market. Please do understand, India sells about 4.5 million cars a year now. We're probably the third or the fourth biggest market in the world. So from that perspective, it'll be very difficult for US automakers also to say that, we don't want to be part of this growth ecosystem. We're expected to grow anywhere between 6% to 7% CAGR over the next 10 odd years, which makes us potentially one of the best markets for anybody to participate in. So I have absolutely no doubt that there'll be some participation from US car makers in the Indian markets going forward.
Right, but Mr. Vigneshwar, there is also this concern that people have voiced across the world that India is really protecting its auto industry. It has taken a protectionist approach over the last many decades, and that has obviously resulted in the growth of a lot of Indian automakers and manufacturing happening in India. So the point I'm trying to come to is that do you think there is case for India to cut import duty for fully built, semi-built units of cars coming into the country? And if India does that, is US going to be the likely beneficiary, or are we going to see a flooding of, let's say, Chinese and other leaders coming into India?
Karthik, it's very apparent that we have been quite protectionist in terms of our policies in our auto sector. I guess that was required initially to make sure that our own, the homegrown companies were there. But slowly we need to ease those restrictions because it also becomes a better choice for the customers. It also becomes more competitive for different manufacturers to get in. But talking about US manufacturers, it'll be interesting to actually go through their model lineup to see whether they have products for India. Because India is very price sensitive and the US is a market which has extremely large cars. So I don't think the US car manufacturers right now have a very rich product portfolio to offer to India in the mass segment. Right. So that's one of the reasons why they got out. So so these things are quite important to consider.
Absolutely. Well, before we continue with this discussion, leaders across the globe are reacting fairly strongly against US President Donald Trump's new tariffs. In fact, Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney has announced a reciprocal 25% tariff on US vehicles that don't meet the USMCA trade deal terms. Let's listen in to what he said.
As I told President Trump during our call last week, Canada will respond to the US auto tariffs. And today I'm announcing that the Government of Canada will be responding by matching the US approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement, and on the non-Canadian content of CUSMA-compliant vehicles from the United States as well. Our tariffs, though, unlike the US tariffs, will not affect auto parts because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And they will also not affect vehicle content from Mexico, who is respecting the CUSMA agreement. Our old relationship of steadily deepening integration with the United States is over. The 80-year period when the United States embraced the mantle of global economic leadership, when it forged alliances rooted in trust and mutual respect, and championed the free and open exchange of goods and services, is over. Well, this is a tragedy. It is also reality.
All right, Shom, final question to you. While we are talking about auto tariffs, the response from the Indian government has been fairly muted right now to all tariff measures that were imposed yesterday by Donald Trump. In fact, it seems to be a wait-and-watch approach where the government is saying that they are going to consult all stakeholders, industry partners, before they firm up a response. Do you think India will be delivering a response on the auto tariffs anytime soon?
Like Vigneshwar started this conversation, we're not exporting too many cars. We're doing a little bit, we're doing some exports of OES players. Now they'll have to go back to the drawing board and see which of these OES players actually manufacture there as well, or have capability to manufacture there, so offset some of that. Also, I'm pretty sure the government's going to think about the glass half full here to say that, is there an opportunity for us to increase some OES exports as well? I'm sure, government organizations will be working through that, because the same tariffs are also applied to players who supply a lot more than what we do from a supplier's perspective. So can we get a piece of the pie over there? I think it'll probably be a measured response, and also do consider the fact that we have some trade negotiations going on currently. So the government will want to make sure that they get results out of those trade negotiations as a part of this tariff impact.
Well, we will have to wait and see how those trade negotiations pan out eventually. But thank you so much, C.S. Vigneshwar and Shom Kapoor, for joining us here this morning on Morning Brief at 9. And moving on now, there is news coming in from the World Trade Organization, and there seems to be an economic meltdown in the making. And here is exactly what has been said by the Director General of the World Trade Organization, saying that while assessing the situation and the situation being rapidly evolving, initial estimates are suggesting that tariffs imposed by Donald Trump could now eventually lead to an overall contraction of about 1% in global merchandise trade volumes this year, representing a downward revision of nearly 4 percentage points from the previous projections, which were coming in at about 3% growth. Now we are talking about a negative 1% degrowth. Joining me this morning also is Mr. Subhash Chandra Garg. Good morning, Mr. Garg. Thank you so much, sir, for being here with us. Help us understand, what do you make of the Trump tariffs that we heard yesterday morning, in fact, late last night, between yesterday and day before yesterday, and the fact that WTO is now seeing a contraction in global trade. What does this mean? Do you see, are you also one of those who believes that the world, definitely the US, but the world could also be heading towards a recession?
Yes, you see, these are not tariff measures. What Trump announced yesterday are basically trade economy destruction measures. These are insane. These are not tariffs. Now, how the world responds to this is going to be deciding how the things evolve from here. Just for the sake of broader numbers, the Americans import about $750 billion of merchandise from the rest of the world every quarter. They also export about $500 billion of goods.
Right.
Now, this let's assume that for about a quarter, the American businessmen, American importers, except those things which have been exempted like pharmaceuticals, gold, etc., they put a freeze on imports. That is most likely the outcome in my judgment. The American importers will not buy for quite some time with these tariffs. This becomes an impossible thing to sell. It's hugely inflationary. But in the now, how does the rest of the world, which exports about 750, let's take 250 billion, which are exempted. So these $500 billion of merchandise, which is surplus in the world for the next quarter, which otherwise would have gone to America, how do you deal with that? Right. Which includes Indian merchandise of about, let's say, $15 billion as well. Now, there are a couple of options. One option is that the rest of the world, like Canada done, but they have done it in a more nuanced manner, impose the additional tariff on American goods, so that the American goods are not also exported to the rest of the world. That's
But
one
in the
option.
Indian context, sir, is that going to make sense? Because we don't import too much from the US in any case. In fact, India, and that is one of Donald Trump's main ires against India, that US has a trade deficit with India. India enjoys a surplus.
See, it doesn't make sense for India to go down that path of imposing extraordinary these trade destruction measures kind of thing, or tariffs, or for the matter anybody else in the world. To my mind, Europeans, Chinese, Vietnamese, none of them should stop, because if they stop what they are importing from America today, those industries in those countries, those consumers who buy those things will suffer badly. It's not American industry which will suffer badly only. It is their consumers, their industry which will also suffer. So I don't advise anyone to put these measures again. You can't match insanity with insanity. You have to match insanity with something strategic, better. I would suggest that the rest of the world should actually join together to absorb these 250 or about $500 billion of extra supply within themselves. And India may also sort of buy, suppose the Chinese goods or Vietnamese goods are now in large surplus amount available because Americans are not buying. It should be possible to buy those goods at much cheaper prices than what normally would have been. And I am quite convinced that in 3 months' time, this American meltdown, the American industry, American stocks, American consumers are going to revolt. If Americans succeed.
So the dichotomy, Mr. Garg, exactly seems to be that at one level you are going to have inflation in the US economy, because with these import tariff measures, pretty much everything that the US consumes is going to become expensive. Now, Donald Trump's original economic theory was that he's going to tax these, and hence the tax revenue that you get from these imports is going to, or these duties is going to offset perhaps the income tax relief that he's going to give his citizens, and in turn make America great again by encouraging manufacturing in America. But if manufacturing happens in America, it's a long-term process. It's not going to be easy to shift factories overnight. It'll take a few years for sure. Then that is going to, in any case, offset the additional tax revenue which the US is getting from these tariffs on imports. So they seem to be working at cross with each other, sir.
Exactly. I don't think anything is going to lead to manufacturing investment in short term in America. I also don't believe that the American consumers would be able to consume the same thing with such high tariffs which are being imposed.
Yeah.
I don't think that is both these outcomes are going to come.
Right.
What is likely and what is most likely to happen is that the American importers will stop importing things, and the consumers will not get what they get.
Exactly.
And the American industry will not get the inputs and the components which it is getting at these kind of tariffs. So this will destroy America. So I in a way see this the beginning of the destroy America again kind of thing.
Destroy America again. Yeah, I seem to agree with you, Mr. Garg. Destroy America again. And the comparisons which are being drawn are with the Great Recession, 1930, similar import tariffs that were raised, and look what that did to the US economy in the 1930s. But I think perhaps as I see it, and correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Garg, industry is going to, global as well as American industry, is going to take its own slow and sweet time. They know there is an inflation coming. They know there could be greater ramifications like stagflation, if not recession. I think they will have to sort of deal with it and play along with Donald Trump without making real investments, and hope like hell that this pain is going to last no more than another 4 years or so, and then there is no more Donald Trump in the Oval Office, sir.
See, it might be a short-term Pyrrhic victory for Donald Trump. Suppose the imports of $500 billion get destroyed, and the American imports for the next quarter reduce from 750 billion to about 250 billion. And Americans in any case are exporting 500. So you may get a situation where America become trade surplus very surprising. And the Donald Trump may claim that, yes, we have turned America from the trade deficit, trade surplus in merchandise. But that is at the cost of the industry and the consumers of America. Their lifestyle, their consumption, their industrial, I don't think American industry, as you seem to be indicating, will rejoice. American industry is in for a big trouble, which is what you see in the stock market reactions. This is going to become more and more accentuated as we go along.
All right. Well, Mr. Garg, we will leave it at that for now. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us this morning. Let's see how this tariff war plays out for US, for India, for the rest of the world. But with that, we will slip into a very short break. The Indian stock markets have just opened, and it seems to be a red start for the markets. Sensex and Nifty are down about 0.7 of a percentage point, and barring HDFC, Bharti, Airtel, Mahindra and Mahindra, pretty much everything on the markets looks absolutely red. The IT sector and energy stocks are taking a massive beating. We will bring you what is really causing these ripples in the market. Is it just tariffs or something else? After this very short break, Feroz Aziz will be joining us.
You work too hard. Work smart like me.
Why? Won a lottery, is it?
You can say so. I'm investing in a great scheme in the share market. High returns guaranteed.
Your high returns aren't Karan Arjun for them to definitely come to you.
Meaning?
Dad, there's risk involved in the share market. Nobody can promise guaranteed high returns. It's illegal to do so.
Really?
Yeah.
What does it take to be the greatest in the world? There is one thing which truly sets you apart. Your inner strength. Sodium TNT Rebar. True inner strength.
It's not the fiefdom of politicians. They owe it to the people. Matter is now more about faith of the millions of devotees than just political slugfest. Does that mean that I can't get a job in Chennai, although I may be best suited for that particular job? They have more civic sense, they have more of civility than all these men. My name is Sudha Sadanand. Welcome to the South Indian.
Back, you're watching Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's look at the mood check of the Indian stock markets as they opened just a few minutes ago. Both Sensex and Nifty are taking a bit of a beating this morning. The indices are down about 0.7 to 0.8 of a percentage point. Nifty 50 edging closer to the 23,000 level. Sensex is below 76,000. Volatility in the Indian markets is high at about 14.06. Well, let's look at what really happened in the US markets as they closed. The Nasdaq has shed almost more than 5% on its benchmark yesterday. Apple is down about 10%. Meta is down about 9%. Nvidia down about 8% or so. And the knock-on effect of Nasdaq seems to be here on the Indian stock markets as well. India's IT stocks are taking a massive beating. Yet again, one more trading day, and so happens to be the case with energy stocks. Well, joining me this morning to decode what really is temping down the mood of the Indian markets is Feroz Aziz, Deputy CEO, Anand Rathi. Feroz, good morning. It's a pleasure having you back here on News 9. Well, we know tariff is the buzzword, the biggest buzzword. There was some respite yesterday when tariffs were announced. The view was that tariffs have hit harder than expected, but markets have taken it better than expected. But that seems to be turning on its head this morning, Feroz.
Karthik, good morning. It's nice to be on your show. I think, this is a reasonably subtle reaction. If NASDAQ is down 5-6%, Dow Jones is down 4%, which is one of the largest falls in recent times. If your market opens up 0.8% lower, I would be reasonably happy. That's point one. Point two, I think the reaction of a tariff has been significantly lower because most of the selling by FIIs in anticipation of the tariff war has already come. the evidence of that is very clearly seen in the last week's FII positive number. Ideally, when there is an event, if the sale of asset is not done, if Indian FIIs in India wouldn't have exited adequately, the last 4-5 days, you would have seen more exits. But on the contrary, just before the tariffs come into effect, you see inflows coming in. That means most of the selling is behind us. So that's a very, very big positive. And all the fall now, if you look at stocks which fell yesterday, have fallen on low volumes. It is not because of higher selling pressure. It is because of lack of buying interest. Is why markets fell over the last 3-4 days. You see stocks which have fallen 5%, they've traded 1/5 their average volume. That implies there's no buying interest, is why some people are ready to sell at 4-5% markdown and not wait for the buyers to return. So sellers, very few. Buying interest, of course, naturally low during uncertainties.
Right, buying interest is low during uncertainty. Now, help us contextualize this, Feroz, with what is likely to transpire from here on. We've seen perhaps the anxiety and the sort of uncertainty in the market is now seemingly out of the door, at least temporarily, because you never know what other surprises Donald Trump could spring on the world. But from what is likely to happen in weeks to come, next week we have our own Monetary Policy Committee meet. RBI is perhaps cut. That is what most analysts are assuming and economists are hoping for, that there is going to be a 25 basis point reduction in the repo rate. But given the likely inflation in the US Fed is unlikely to cut rates. Now, this means the interest rate differential between India and the US now widens even further. Do you see this as an opportunity again for FIIs to park money?
No, Karthik. If you look at what you said, you're absolutely right on certain counts. Only on the interest rate bit, I might have a difference of opinion. Coming back to the point of the tariff war resulting in a market sentiment lower, I personally think that in life you don't get both short-term benefit and long-term benefit in most circumstances, unless God is very kind, right? You aaj bhi acha khana pina jate hain, you want to spend crores today, you want to also save for your retirement hundreds of crores, not possible. So you always short-term mein pet kaatna padta hai, tab jaake long-term hota hai. So whatever this whole new world order which is forming, I think is the most beneficial for India. This is what we've been wanting all our life. You see what has happened to China. In the first term of Trump, they increased in tariffs by 20%. Correct. That is 100 rupee commodity becoming 120. Then a 25% recent one, which happened lately in this term. And now another 34%. That means $100 Chinese good now needs to be at 201. Now, that's the kind of, you always wanted China plus one. Now China's commodity has doubled in terms of tariffs. And India is definitely one of the nominees. Will India take the spot? Don't know. But India is only poised for that because your per capita income is $2,500. US is $80,000. So if they have to move manufacturing to India, that's when it is logical. So lower labor cost, which is what China capitalized on. China has got a reducing workforce because of the one family, one child policy. India is going to expect to add 15 crores more workforce. So I personally think India is definitely one of the nominees for the manufacturing.
All right. And I also want to take this opportunity to understand from you, Feroz, how do you see Brazil from here? Because Brazil seems to be one of the beneficiaries now of the China plus as many, theories that could emerge, because it just has a 10% tariff. It enjoys in Donald Trump's dictionary a trade deficit with the US. In fact, US has a surplus on Brazil. Brazil has been left away from all the other adversities of tariffs, at least as compared to Mexico, India and China. Let's not forget Bangladesh, Pakistan. I don't know if it exports anything to the US, but Bangladesh, Vietnam, all of these are getting hammered with tariffs, but Brazil is emerging as perhaps one sweet spot. And it seems that a lot of manufacturing of leather products, textiles, and perhaps even auto components could potentially move to Brazil. So how do you think Brazil is placed from here? And look at the Brazil markets also. It seems more green than red, in fact, in trade this morning.
Absolutely, Karthik. Your observation is so good. Do you even need me as a guest? Is what I would
No, we always need you as a guest.
No, this is brilliant, Karthik. Exactly the analysis which I think makes sense. But what happens, friend, when it comes to India? See, if you look at how India is poised, it might not be the top slot. But do you get a collateral benefit of this new world order, especially in global trade? To my mind, yes. So you have a $50 billion surplus with the US. China has $320 billion. Right? Vietnam and Thailand and Bangladesh are an export-driven economy. We are a domestic-driven economy. 2% of our GDP is what is US's export. If there is a dampening of demand by even 20%, you're looking at GDP fall of about 0.4% in India. So I personally think that India, of course, India also is an importer of crude. If it moves its crude purchases from Saudi and Russia to US, the tariffs become a little more reasonable. So point I'm trying to make is definitely, like you rightly pointed out, Brazil is going to be one of the largest beneficiary. Of course, India is one of the nominees. Will it win its award? Don't know. But we at least have got our chance for sure.
Feroz, before I let you go, I really want to ask this one question that every investor who's looking at these heat maps and Sensex Nifty figures every morning is wondering, what do I do with my investments? I was sitting at handsome gains in the month of September, October, and look what has happened to my portfolio. And I think all these fintech apps that sort of compel you to look at your investments every day, make life difficult for the average retail investor. So the question is, what should the average retail investor do? Because there was a hope at least that, okay, 3 months or so is as long as the pain will last, okay, extended to 6 months. But given the kind of hammering that stock markets are taking, there seems to be some sort of a fear now in investors who have very consciously, deliberately done their SIPs over time.
Absolutely, Karthik. I think you've made 2-3 very, very important, some heart aspects, some mind. When it comes to investors, I don't know why they have such unfair expectations from equity. Okay, silver delivered 9 years of negative return. Nobody went and sold their silver. 9 years of silver's negative return was okay. Now suddenly when you see silver greater than 1,10,000 per kg, everybody wants to run buying it. Nobody wants to sell it. People are okay with real estate not being checked for prices for years. No, nobody calls the broker also. But here, like you said, the apps want to show you the price, and that brings emotion, and that brings reaction. So I think Indian retail has been far smarter than Indian HNI. In spite of being in the HNI segment, I'm saying Indian HNIs have been far more vulnerable, loose-hearted, and sold at the wrong times over the last 4-5 years post-COVID, in the hope that they understand markets better than the retail guy. Retail guy at least understand that he doesn't understand. The HNI thinks he understands, but he doesn't understand.
Right.
That's a worse off combination. So to answer your pointed question, I think this seldom does it happen that you can be confident about even a 1-year investment. I would say this financial year, you would end in a positive territory with 95% odds. Now, positive territory is not just capital, but PIYUSH. If you're going to make more than debt return from here till the financial year end, with 90% odds, I think that's a great short term. Okay. Long term is brilliant. Because of the new global order, India will find its better spot than where we currently are.
Okay, that is a good sense of encouragement that we're getting from you, Feroz, this morning, and I'm sure all the retail investors would be very happy listening to you. HNIs, I'm not too sure because you're questioning their judgment and their understanding of the market. But finally, Feroz, I think it sort of, the stemming fear really comes from the fact that there are now talks about US going into recession. So if US goes into recession, see, stagflation, I think, is something that even the average retail investor was kind of, okay with that. Okay, it's a US-based problem. US will deal with it. But if US does go into recession, and that is the commentary which is coming now from multiple quarters, I don't know how trustworthy, then what happens? What happens to the Indian economy and then, of course, the Indian markets?
Yes, Karthik. Actually, just a couple of years back, year and a half back, everybody's praying for US recession. Because today you see Fed rates are at 4.25, 4.5. 4.25, 4.5. Fed 10-year Fed rate is at 4.005 yesterday. Those are not usual Fed rates. The Fed rates averaged at 0.8% on the 10-year Fed rate basis. Now we are at 4%. So if you remember, everybody was waiting for an interest rate cut, and the growth numbers not slowing down was the reason why Fed deferred its rate cycle. Inflation not coming off, jobs data not becoming disheartening. So now this inflation increase due to tariff is induced inflation, which is not come by demand. So I personally think you can't have your have your cake and eat it too. So point is that I personally believe this over the short term may defer Fed rate cuts, but from the long term, normalcy has to prevail. Now, Indian repo is 6.25. Let's assume average is 5.5.
Yeah.
Now, if you are operating at 20, won't you be worried? Repo rate at 20, 4 times more than the average of the last 10 years. So that bringing back to normalcy is very important from a US standpoint, and that should happen. And this jolt was needed because US has always deferred the problem. Be it the 2008 crisis, they print money and defer the problem. COVID crisis, print money and defer the problem.
Correct.
So I personally think $36 trillion of debt of US needs a full stop. And that's what I think is being aspired for from the Trump government, which is the logical thing to do from a country's perspective.
All right, Firoz, let's leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us here on Morning Brief at 9. Always a pleasure having you with us. But now we also have another special guest to decode what is really happening in the markets right now. The rout that we are seeing, especially in IT, auto and energy stocks. Devin Choksi, Managing Director of DR Choksi Finserv Private Limited, joins us this morning. Mr. Choksi, good morning. Help us understand why are energy stocks taking a beating? It seems that oil prices are softening, and if oil prices are softening, then the profits of energy producing companies and refiners should increase. But what we are seeing today is a negative. In fact, ONGC is down about 5.4% right now. Reliance is down about 2.3%. So what's really going on in energy stocks this morning, sir?
Hi, good morning. Well, I think difficult to pinpoint, I think, a particular reason when the entire tsunami has happened. How clear the challenge out would be the collateral damage. We are not doubting any companies, I think, fundamentals at this point of time, particularly when it comes to India, because largely a domestic-driven economy. Right. At the same time, I think whatever the export-driven obligations or export-driven initiatives that the country has been taking, I think they might have some amount of uncertainty for sure. But the fact remains that I think largely a domestic-driven economy and the fundamentals of the domestic economy are not doubted at this point of time. Yet, I think you are seeing the implication on different sectors, largely because of the collateral damages which are happening around. Now, whether a particular reason can be attributed to oil and gas sector or whether a particular reason can be attributed to energy at large, I'm not too sure at this point of time. Let this particular storm stop and then probably rationally we evaluate various aspects of the implications which comes on different industries directly or indirectly due to this tariff business.
Reasons perhaps, and I'm just spitballing here and trying to make sense of what is happening, Mr. Choksi, could one of the reasons be that since Donald Trump has gone ahead and imposed sweeping tariffs across the board, there is a likelihood that he is going to see through the secondary tariffs also, which he announced, especially on countries which import oil from Russia, cheap oil from Russia. So tariff as high as 50% likely to be hit on countries including India. Could that be one of the fears which is driving down energy stocks this morning?
But that was the fear even day before yesterday, before the tariff was announced.
Right, but so the fact that he has gone ahead and implemented tariffs and has not deferred them, does it give more surety that he may go ahead and implement the secondary tariffs also, sir?
We can't doubt it. I think he has enough amount of powers to implement second sections on Russia as well. Okay. Cannot be doubting that part of it either. Right. But should that happen, I think we are going to have other set of problems. At this point of time, I am refraining from putting this viewpoint across because it's more speculative.
All right, sir. Help us make sense of what is happening in the auto sector also, sir, because we didn't see the kind of beating that auto stocks are taking today happen on the boards yesterday. In fact, auto stocks seem to be a lot worse off today than they were as soon as the tariffs were announced on the auto sector. Tata Motors down about 4.5% this morning. While it's understandable that Jaguar Land Rover is one of the concerns because it's exported to the US and US and China are its primary markets. But the fact is that even those are made in the UK and then exported to the US, not in India. So there are lower tariffs on JLR, but Tata Motors seems to be taking a major beating. Even Maruti is down about 2.6% this morning. Auto data came 2 days back. Auto tariffs have been in the works forever. So component makers, I understand, should take a beating because they supply to the US. Why are auto markets, automakers taking a beating today, sir?
It is due to the fear of purchasing ability of the US citizens, I think, which is going to go down under significantly, and that is again lending the collateral damage. I agree that I think Maruti is not exporting to America enough as much as I think the Tata Motors JLR is.
Yeah.
But if the purchasing power of the consumer out there is coming under question, then probably I think you will have a significant amount of damage taking place, even if at a lower tariff. So I think one is not yet fully grappling with the kind of situation which is likely to emerge in the USA, wherein how much demand fall stroke recession may happen in that country due to the cost of input increasing or cost of product increasing in the hands of consumer. One is not completely sure on each and every industrial aspect. So that is why I said there is a storm. I think let it pass through and then carefully analyze each and every aspect of it, and then see whether is this a real threat or it may be, I think, probably reversible. In my viewpoint, I think the secondary stage, the Trump administration is expected to sit across with different countries and different industries and try and see how I think the tariff that have been implemented can be rationalized. That is a distinct possibility going forward. So one will have to wait and see at this point of time.
All right, sir. And final question to you, sir, on IT stocks, because IT stocks, of course, are directly linked to what is going to happen in the US. US is not going to cut interest rate. Inflation is going to hit US, and chances of, or at least talks of US potentially heading into recession. So IT sector will continue to take it on its chin. How do you foresee growth or degrowth for the IT sector in this financial year?
In my viewpoint, I think it will be the last chance if US has to get into the recession, not immediate chance. That is the fact that I think they have demonstrated their ability to beat the recession. They have demonstrated their ability by way of printing currencies in past, and I think they are very well known for, I think, doing those kind of radical things. So in my viewpoint, I think recession is a fear which is definitely justified at this point of time, but I think not likely to happen. That is what I would like to put across. IT spending is uncertain, even though I think it demands significant amount of spending, largely due to the fact that the changes are happening across. And if US has to adapt to the manufacturing, which is largely AI driven, then be it IoTs or be it computing, I think whichever way you look at it, I guess I think the IT will be in forefront. Maybe this current uncertainty of 1 or 2 quarters is possibly, I think, keeping that fear alive, that I think some of the companies may defer their spending. And that's what I think one will have to testify even after a while, when I think the rational starts prevailing and they start taking the corrective course eventually.
All right, Mr. Choksi, let us leave it at that for now. And that's the mood on the markets right now. More red than one would have liked, but that's the reality of the Trump tariffs hitting India and hitting rest. We will slip into another short break, but more stories coming up for you. On the other side, you are watching Morning Brief at 9.
What does it take to be the greatest in the world? There is one thing which truly sets you apart. Your inner strength. Sodium DMT Rebar. True inner strength.
Light, camera, and action. Kick back, relax, grab your favorite snack because News9 is here with your weekend dose of entertainment. It's time to take a deeper dive into the buzzworthy happenings of the entertainment world. From celebrity gossips to exclusive conversations, from nostalgic moments to News9's pick of the week, don't worry, we've got you covered here. And I hope you've grabbed your popcorn by now because News9's page 3 is here to serve you everything that we call entertainment. So do stay tuned every Saturday and Sunday, 2:30 p.m.
What is to the nines? In literal terms, it's perfection. But to us, it's not just a phrase, it's an attitude. One that starts at your desk and sends a statement to the world. To the nines is about taking charge. It's a way of life where every seam, every fold, is crafted with excellence. It's timeless elegance and uncompromising quality made for the corner office. It's the ideas that inspire redefining order and elevating the tabletop. To the nines, for the leaders of today and the visionaries of tomorrow.
At 9, let's bring you all the other global reactions that we are getting on Trump tariffs. Well, leaders across the globe are reacting strongly against US President Donald Trump's new tariffs, while British Prime Minister Keir Starmer warned the US move will have economic consequences for the UK. China said it firmly opposes the tariffs and will take necessary measures to protect its own interests. Meanwhile, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz called Trump's decision fundamentally wrong, saying it would damage the global economy. Listen in to what these global leaders have to say.
There will be an economic impact from the decisions that the US has taken, both here and globally. But I want to be crystal clear. We are prepared. Nobody wins in a trade war. That is not in our national interest. We have a fair and balanced trade relationship with the US. Negotiations on an economic prosperity deal, one that strengthens our existing trading relationship, they continue, and we will fight for the best deal for Britain.
I consider the US President's latest tariff decisions to be fundamentally wrong. This is an attack on a trade order that has created prosperity all over the world, a trade order that is essentially the result of American endeavors. The entire global economy will suffer from these ill-considered decisions, companies and consumers all over the world, including in the USA. Under the guise of reciprocity, the US has imposed tariffs on products exported to the US from many countries, including China, which seriously violates World Trade Organization rules and seriously damages the rules-based multilateral trading system. China firmly opposes this and will take necessary measures to firmly safeguard its legitimate interests. China has repeatedly stressed that there are no winners in trade wars and tariff wars, and there is no way out for protectionism. China urges the US to correct its wrong practices and negotiate with countries around the world, including China, to resolve trade differences in an equal, respectful and mutually beneficial manner.
All right, and finally, there's a word coming in from Commerce and Industry Minister PIYUSH Goyal to India's startup, and the word seems to be level up. Are we going to be happy being delivery boys and girls, is what Minister Goyal is asking startups. Is that the destiny of India? This is not startup, he says. This is entrepreneurship. What the other side is doing, and the other side, Minister Goyal referring to China, is robotics, machine learning, 3D manufacturing and next generation factories. Well, this is what PIYUSH Goyal is telling startups at the Startup Mahakumbh, which is on in New Delhi right now, asking them to level up and scale up beyond being just delivery boys and delivery girls and providing for the gig economy. He's also urging them not to be happy with just making cookies and ice cream. But his remarks have not gone down too well with Indian startups as well as those who foster the ecosystem. And this is what Adit Palicha, the founder of ZEPTO, has said, and he's slamming the remarks coming from Minister PIYUSH Goyal, saying that there are almost 1.5 lakh real people who are earning livelihoods on ZEPTO's platform today. He also says that the company that did not exist just 3.5 years ago today pays as much as 1,000 crore rupees of taxes to the government. Thousands of crores in taxes, 1.5 lakh jobs and over $1 billion of FDI which ZEPTO has brought into the country. And then in addition to that, hundreds of crores which are invested in the organization and the back-end supply chain, especially for fresh fruits and vegetables. The question that Adit Palicha is asking the minister is that if that isn't a miracle in Indian innovation, then he's saying, I honestly don't know what it is. So strong words coming in from Adit Palicha, but Adit Palicha is not alone. Many other startups are taking to X to go ahead and slam Minister Goyal's observation. In fact, even a veteran of India's IT industry, MOHANDAS, saying that long-term investors like endowment funds, insurance companies still do not invest in startups in India despite efforts of the ministry. He's asking the minister to please remedy this situation. He's also talking about alternate investment funds, and he's saying that AIF investments are facing regulatory overreach and the flow of AIF into startups has come down. He's also questioning the RBI, saying the RBI harasses overseas investors on remittances. In fact, for fast-charging EV buses, he says that we have the technology, but great majority of buses run by PSU. So how do you sell to these dinosaurs is what Mohandas is asking the government, referring to PSUs as dinosaurs. Well, that debate just seems to be heating up. We will get you updates on that. For now, this is a wrap on Morning Brief at 12. Thank you so much for joining us. But news and updates will continue right here on News9.
History for a reason tonight.
Will it change the shape of American foreign policy? Violence has erupted in Manipur once again. How can we pass judgments, sir, before any inquiry that, they were volunteers or militants, sir?